Hey, this is Lexi.
And this is Bob.
And we're Bad Association. We're here to talk about how the last 2 weeks there's been a lot of for and anti-Lloyd discussions going on.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of thoughts. Full disclosure, Lloyd was one of the first ex-JW apostate videos I ever dared to even click on. Mm-hmm. So there were definitely some feelings there as part of my journey. There's a lot more information about us in the description if you're curious about that.
Yeah, just some background context stuff.
But we really just want to focus on this issue.
Yeah. So the first thing we wanted to do was just try to encapsulate the core issue, the thing people are really talking about, into a single cogent sentence that we can then examine and really interrogate. And so we kind of came up with a single sentence that I think encapsulates what almost everybody is worried about, is complaining about.
And we wanted to make sure it's completely as objective and unbiased. We didn't put any of our feelings into this statement.
Right.
This is just what happened, what's been admitted on the live stream. Right. This is what we know happened.
Okay, and you should see this on screen as well. Lloyd Evans cheated on his wife using patron money to solicit sex workers in Thailand and elsewhere. I think that's a pretty succinct summary of what happened. And on our screen, we'll probably have this in the video as well, I've underlined certain words. And the reason I underlined those words is because those are the core variables in this that I'd like to interrogate by maybe swapping them out and seeing how we feel, seeing how those things change. And I think that is an important part of interrogating, just applying critical thinking to how we should feel going forward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, looking at it right now, if it was somebody else, I think we would feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Or at least we should feel the same way. There's no reason for us to feel if we found out that, I don't know, any other person who's sort of famous.
I mean, I think potentially with, the Lloyd Evans things, I think people have, the way people felt about Lloyd is a lot different than people felt about Jeff Bezos. If this sentence was about, if we put Jeff Bezos in there, I don't think anyone is surprised, concerned, interested, right?
But, imagine, okay, let's swap them out. Imagine, and this is absolutely not true. This is just not speculation. This is absolutely not true. I'm just using this as an example. Let's imagine Telltale did this, right? Telltale cheated on his wife. Do you think any people would feel differently?
No, I think they feel the exact same
I think
way.
they would feel exactly the same, and that's good. I think that's good, because, your feelings on the issue should be consistent regardless of the person involved, right?
Yeah.
You should be, if you're against something when one person does it, you should be against it when other people do it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of part of why people are so mad about this Thailand part, and we'll get there. But people are saying Lloyd may have engaged in CSA when he's also been railing against CSA, and that is, I think, a good holding to a standard, right? Mm-hmm. Where now, granted, I don't know if that speculation about CSA is necessarily true about Lloyd. It might be true. I don't know. I'm not magic, but the consistency there is good to have.
Yeah.
Now let's think about cheating. Cheating is an interesting part because people use cheating as the fulcrum of talking about both how this is not our business, but also it seems to be the central part of why people are so outraged. At least from my reckoning, that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, it does seem like it is interesting that, if you cheat on someone, it's bad, but it's none of my business.
Right.
But at the same time, it's also, how dare he cheat on his wife with our money?
Right.
Which is, so it seems like there's a caveat, not my business, until my money's involved, then it is my business.
Right. And so, I think that line of reasoning falls through, because if we then think about, okay, let's leave the rest of the sentence the same, and imagine that it was a consensual thing, right? His wife consented to him going and sleeping with other women, right? Then in that situation, he's not violating the rules of the marriage, mm-hmm. and that's not cheating. Right?
Yeah.
And so then, is it a problem that he's using money to do that? I think some people might say yes, and I don't think they should.
I think, this is the thing that I was I feel like we're moving on to the...
Yeah, we are moving a little bit, but...
So I feel like, final thing on, as far as the whole cheating part.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for me personally, that's, like, if you want to be polyamorous, you need to be honest about it.
Yeah,
if you cannot, like, if monogamy just isn't working for you, you need to ball up and say something.
Right.
See something, say something. That's just my 2 cents. I understand that, like, people...
But I mean, like, part of that is, though, the question is, like, how you say this is what you should do if somebody wants to be polyamorous, if they want to go outside the marriage or whatever. My question is, how much is that our business? Because people talk about it like it's both very much our business and not our business, and I want to know, I think the consistent position to have would be, it's important that people recognize that you need to have that conversation with your spouse, but I don't need to be involved in that conversation.
I think a good rule of thumb as far as someone else's marriage is it's no one's business unless someone's being abused. Like, unless that's, I think, a good rule of thumb would be...
Like, not just within a marriage, but within a family, I would think, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's like, you can avert your gaze or whatever, but, like...
Yeah, like, I may not want that for myself, but that's also not my business if it's,
but like, if someone
it's not
needs,
hurting anybody.
Like, and again, I do, like, this is just an example. This is nothing like this has happened anywhere, in any recent events, anywhere. But, like, if someone confides in you, like, yeah, he keeps cheating on me, but every time I leave, he won't let me. Then it's your business. Yeah. It's now your business to do something.
But I mean, I think part of the reason that's your business, when in your example you just gave, was that the person is inviting help. And in our situation, we don't have that. Now, granted, that doesn't mean she wouldn't want to invite help. We don't know. But right now, as it stands, we don't have an invitation to get involved.
Yeah, I guess it's not, and like, it's also not even so much about the invitation, but it's also about, like, how much can you do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much any of us
like,
can
unless
do,
we're gonna follow him and go, like, hey,
you buddy,
you know what this did last time.
I can't go to Croatia and strap a chastity belt on him. Like,
so we can't really...
I can't afford it. That's the only thing stop. No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, like, so it's not your business if you can't do anything about it. And, like, also, like, even, like, on a spreading awareness issue, like, if you, like, okay, so, like, people care about the environment, so they'll put up posters, and
I should hope so.
And people who care about the environment, they go so far, they'll make posters of different things you can do to help. Okay, but if we put posters around, don't cheat on your wife, that literally did nothing for any, that didn't stop one person who was going to do it anyway.
I guess you can't say that for sure, but I would be pretty confident.
If that's what you needed, then
good. I think you probably could have heard that message sooner. Yeah. Not from a poster.
Okay, so let's move on.
Yeah, so this next one I have underlined is his, and specifically I want to highlight, do you feel like this would be different among the ex-JW community if Lloyd wasn't a man? Do you think him being a man has to do with this? Both from the perspective of Lloyd's behavior being expected of him as a man, and also their perceptions of him. You know, do you think men are held to a proper standard? Are we holding them to low a standard, too high a standard?
That's interesting. Because with it, like, okay, I can't really even think of, like,
an ex-JW woman speaker. And I think that's an important thing to note, because there are lots of ex-JW women, and
yeah, but
actually most of our Instagram interactions are with ex-JW women.
And, like, I would say, and even the YouTubers that I follow, I don't know if this says something to, like, for or against anybody, but I don't think anyone's cultivated a personality like Lloyd has, like a reputation, because, like, there's lots of female ex-JW channels that I follow, or like fan couples, kind of like what we're doing,
right? Yeah,
and things like, and just also just women by themselves saying things about the Watchtower,
and, yeah.
But it's really just like looking at the thing. I don't know if they're married, like, probably. I don't know anything about them. like at all. I just
yeah.
know the content. So I think that could also. So I don't.
I think that probably points towards not so much a problem with the ex-JW community, but more like society at large. We do tend to aggregate towards male voices on YouTube.
Yeah.
A lot of almost all the big YouTubers are men.
But this isn't also, but also like for me though, I think this is more, and this isn't like a hurt or thing, but one of my favorite Lloyd videos was the one he did with his daughter, because I liked watching him interact with her, and I showed it to my friend, and we watched that video, and we're like, oh, he's such a warm-hearted person, because we saw him with his daughter, and like obviously he wasn't gonna like shake her on camera.
Right.
Not that he does off camera. Right. I want to be clear. Yeah. I'm just saying, but like it's hard not to be endeared to someone when you see them interacting
with a child.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's
a positive interaction with a child is very human.
So I think with the variable is not. I'm sure I can't. It's just hard because we can't even put like if Deanna did it, we'd feel this way because like would we like I don't even like would we even find out? Probably not. Yeah. Like so. His personality, his reputation, him being a man, and like I think, you know what, I will say him being a man does play a factor, because I feel like there is, even if it's, I don't know if it's too high or too low, but there is like this thing, like if a man cheats, it's like
men.
Yeah,
they can't help themselves.
These insatiable sex beasts,
right?
Who can't.
And I think that is actually part of. And like, I don't mean, obviously, I wasn't raised to JW, so I can't speak from experience. But the impression I get is that so much of that lifestyle is centered around the idea that women are supposed to be subservient to men. And men are these
hunter-gatherer.
Yeah, hunter-gatherer types, but also like they're these beings driven by their needs, and women are supposed to help them achieve those needs. And even if you don't believe the dogma of that stuff, if you were raised in that environment where that is the expectation of you, those can have long-lasting impacts on you. And I think Lloyd actually, maybe even correctly, assesses himself in that way, and he says, he was very damaged from his upbringing, and it led him to have maybe certain sexual proclivities that aren't necessarily healthy. And like, I think it's that seems quite plausible to me. Now, I'm not some expert, right? Like, maybe somebody can point me to some research that says that I'm all wrong on that. That's fine. I've been wrong before. So, like...
You can take it.
I can take it, but like and I don't mean to give Lloyd credit for that, because it's not exactly an incredibly insightful observation, but I think that is a component of this where both men are not expected to hold up to high moral standards, and also men don't hold themselves to high moral standards, because we're just given so much leeway to do wrong. Right? Both within the JW thing, I think especially, but also just in broader society. Men can kind of just goof things up, and then everyone's just supposed to, like, forgive us. But if a woman does something wrong, suddenly she's tarred for life.
Yeah. Like, I think it's interesting, like...
That's not a thing about cancel culture. Not talking about cancel culture. I mean, like, when someone does something really seriously wrong.
But I do think that is something interesting, because I wish I could back this up with any facts, so maybe it's not even true. But I remember reading an article once that was talking about, like, women are more likely to forgive male spouses and cheat than men are. Like, if a wife cheats, you're done. We're divorced.
That intuitively sounds like something that, I mean, just based on my life experience, I feel like more men would be... But I mean, like, again, I can't cite a specific statistic either.
Yeah.
Maybe if we find one before the video goes up, or if somebody wants to recommend us a statistic that does back that up, we'll put that in the description. It. If you disprove it as well, we'll put an annotation
or pin it, whatever.
We'll put a comment in the thing, and then we'll explain it. Okay.
But yeah, okay. So let's move on. Next, wife. We kind of started talking about that a little bit.
Would people feel the same way if it was his girlfriend?
That's interesting. Yeah. There's more of a commitment there. I think also, but with... Or
boyfriend or husband or... Right, like that's how we kind of
like the fact that they're... Yeah, the fact that they're married, I do think makes it feel more important.
I think it makes it feel more important, especially if you were, again, raised in a society where the importance of marriage is weighed so heavily.
But I guess here's the thing, though. But if she was just his girlfriend, but do they still have the kids? Because I feel like...
Sure, I don't know.
Well, I feel like if they live together and they have kids, I think people would feel like...
You think?
The wife is just a piece of paper at that point. Like, that's...
Not the wife, but the fact that the marriage is...
Yeah, the marriage is just a piece of paper. But, like, she's still your wife.
Right, yeah.
Like... Especially, like, this long.
Like common law wife or whatever.
Yeah, like, that's basically the same thing. Like, we were living together, and, like, our marriage is very much just like a piece of... I'm your wife regardless.
Yeah,
like,
the marriage means nothing to either of us.
That's not what I mean. But, yeah, like, so, I think and this goes to what I was saying before, but the knowledge we have of their relationship, like people, like they have a series on their channel, which maybe, I don't know if it'll
May not go on, we'll see.
But where, Deanna would pitch, like, different things that an ex-JW would say, or that a witness, an active witness, would say, and then Lloyd would have to try to counteract it on the spot, like, without any preparation beforehand. And it was like, they had really cute chemistry together.
Wow, I have some real feelings about that series, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. That feels like a very narcissistic thing to do.
Really?
To me, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just not... I don't know. Like, I think...
He fumbles quite a bit.
Okay, well, I guess that's good, I guess. No, maybe not.
Well, I mean, like, the whole thing is just, like, it's basically like a theocratic ministry school, just, like, what to say when the unexpected.
I don't know. It sounded to me the way you initially phrased it.
Oh, like he was just showing off
like he was showing off how good and smart he is as an atheist.
Oh, no,
Which, like, I've definitely seen a lot of atheists do.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But
I used to be way more guilty of it than I am now, and even now I still fall.
Maybe, but the general consensus in the comments was that even though she was the witness, she still basically won each round.
Yikes, okay.
Because, like, she was just really good at staying on him, like, which is what a witness would do. So she was very good at playing the role.
She's well practiced. She lived that life.
Yeah. I don't think I could do that to you. I wasn't a good enough witness for that.
Yeah, you were a terrible witness.
But anyway, okay, let's move on to the next point. And this is, I think, this is
maybe the big crux.
This is, I think,
a lot of people.
This is where everyone, I feel like, even if we're good with, like, Lloyd cheating on his wife was bad, but not our business. Once we bring in the patron money, now people have
Here's a
different...
dividing line, yeah.
Yeah, it is like, maybe it's still none of our business. Okay, so with patrons, first and foremost, you don't have to be a patron to anybody.
Sure, yeah.
But when you give someone money, how
responsible are they to follow your wishes for that money?
Because, like, I've been trying to remember, because, like, okay, I do not know what this term is, and there is a term for what I'm talking about. If anybody knows, please tell me what this real term is. But I do know, like, okay, if you want to buy ethically, so, like, I won't, like, I recently found out about the banana wars, and now I'm, like, iffy on if I want to buy from any bananas, if any of them are safe. But so that's an example.
By the way, if you're curious about the banana wars, just Google the banana wars and find out about the war crimes committed by the fruit companies in order to protect bananas. It's a fascinating read.
But again, like I said, okay, so at the same time, like Apple, iPhones are made in sweatshops. And people know that, and they buy them anyway.
They put suicide nets up on the factories to make sure that the people don't kill themselves.
Like, it's...
horrific.
It's horrific. But
some people still buy, yeah.
So, how much of what your money goes to is important if you get the thing that you want? So, with Lloyd, he's saying, I'll keep making ex-JW videos, and we'll do whatever his patron rewards are. And you give him that money, and he's still doing those things for you. He's just also
spending that money on
whatever.
Yeah. So, it's interesting you bring it up that way, because I feel like the payment actually goes the other direction. I'm not thinking about it in terms of consumer buying product from service provider, like us buying videos from Lloyd. Instead, I think of it as Lloyd works for us as our employees. And as a result, we give him money, right? So at my day job, I do IT, and the company pays me to sit there and do IT work. And then in my off hours, I can spend that money however I want. The employer does not get a say. But if I go spend that money on something really awful and I get into the news, they may fire me for my conduct outside of work. They can do that. They reserve the right to do that. And so I think this is probably more analogous to the employer situation, because the patrons might be paying Lloyd, and then they individually decide for themselves, I don't like what you did with that money. But at the same time, I also don't necessarily think it really makes sense. I've heard some arguments about, like, you know, when you give money to the Patreon, there's an expectation of blank. Or Lloyd's counter-argument to that is, I wouldn't have used Patreon if I had known there was some expectation of me having to turn the money into videos or whatever. And I think there's some validity to both sides of that. I hate to both sides this, but I think there is some validity to both sides, because and I mean, I don't consider this to be a mandatory expense, but if Lloyd considers his paying prostitutes, paying sex workers a mandatory expense for him to live a comfortable life, then when he receives that money, he has to spend that money on the things that make his life comfortable so that he can make the videos. That becomes a living expense. At the same time, I also understand if they think, you know, I expected my money to go straight back into the business. And that makes sense for, like, a non-profit. And I think it would really depend on whether the Patreon was for the John Cedars channel, for JW Survey, like these kinds of things. If it was if these are donations towards a non-profit organization, then you have a legal requirement to spend those funds in service of the mission statement of the nonprofit.
I think the fact that he has mentioned on video several times that he is a full-time activist.
Right.
So the only money he has is money he makes doing this.
Right.
And we're not going to get into, like, any tweets or anything like that, or other money. It's whatever. Yeah. People are complaining about the Patreon money. They're not even complaining.
Not just Patreon money, also donations to PayPal or whatever.
All that. But, like, if you watch, I think, and I just honestly, like, genuinely, I just think that this is a really interesting, kind of an interesting pickle. Yeah. Because if, on one hand, he cheated on his wife, and he needed money to do it, and the only money he has comes from me, and I don't like that, so I'm not going to support him anymore. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
I don't even think, is anyone even arguing that part? Like, that's fine. I think.
I don't know. Yeah.
If you stop, like, if you continue, if you're like, look, ain't no skin off my back what he does with it, I just want to watch some more rebuttals.
Yeah.
Then, like, that's fine, too.
Yeah.
I think.
And I don't think most people are tearing each other apart for their decisions with regard to their money. Whether they continue to support. I think most of the time, most of the focus is on Lloyd still. And that's probably where it should be. I do want to say, I run another channel that, you know, is eventually going to shut down. We have a Patreon over there. It doesn't really matter. And there's 5 of us working that channel. And I think the expectation between the 5 of us about what it means to receive patron money on that channel is that at the end of the day, we will turn that money around into improvements to the channel, and anything that remains is going to be split 5 ways between us. And that's it, right? So, like, if we need to get better microphones, if we need to get a new computer, these are the kinds of expenses. Mm-hmm. And, like, that doesn't necessarily mean the total amount of money goes evenly to all 5 of us. And it hasn't. When we've needed to spend some of that money, some of it's gone to one person and not another person, and that's fine. We're all good with it just sitting there until we need to use it. I would have a problem as a patron if one of the five of us, like I'm imagining myself as a fan, as a patron, I would have a problem if one of the five of us took some money and just pocketed it. Right? Because, like, that was specifically handled for with the after expenses are paid, we split it 5 ways. There was already a method for that.
Extra for
but someone took extra for themselves, and then we go through the expenses, and then we split it 5 ways. I would have a problem with that, even though that's not an explicit statement of how the money's going to be used.
Like, if that leaked out to you as a patron.
Yeah, I would be upset about that. And so my question is, this is a sort of similar situation, because it becomes clear to patrons now that Lloyd is using the money in a way that you didn't expect. But he never stated what you should expect the money to go to in a very concrete, exhaustive list. He didn't say, we're going to use the money exclusively on food, shelter, clothing, the occasional restaurant, going out to the movies, and then this. And that's it, right?
So he didn't make an itemized list. There's no... It's just expensive. And you could argue, like you said, he needs to, have the will to do it. And if part of the will to do it is prostitutes, then that's what he's going to spend the money on to do the work that he said he's going to do.
Right. Again, we're going to get to this whether or not paying sex workers is okay later.
But the next variable is just money.
Yeah. So what if he'd used something other than money as part of this transaction?
I mean, you need to give an example.
He used resources. He had friends who were fans of his thing say, oh, you can borrow my camera. You can borrow my studio space. You can borrow my plane to go to Thailand. Would that change it?
Honestly, I feel like that would make it a lot worse. Money's very
agree.
impersonal.
I think that would make it, yeah.
That sounds awful.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, he would be using his sort of something of fame as an ex-JW activist in order to extract favors from people.
Yeah.
And is that okay? Especially, is it okay to extract favors that way? Is it okay to extract favors in order to do the rest of this stuff? I don't know. I don't know necessarily what the right answer to that is, but that is the kind of thing that I would wonder about. And those are the kinds of things that I think people should be taking into consideration when we're teasing out the contours of this situation. When we're figuring out exactly how we want to feel about it. Not how we want to feel, but how we do feel about it.
Okay, so now let's focus on the next...
underline, is sex work.
So...
Real quick, we're just going to lay this out there. Sex work is valid. We don't want to shame anybody for sex work. I actually feel bad that I said prostitutes earlier. But maybe I'm just a loser. I don't know. But either way, sex work itself is valid. That doesn't mean child sex slavery is okay. Any form of slavery is bad. Any form of child sex is bad.
Needs to be legal, needs to be consensual, and it's...
If you're engaging in sex work, it needs to be legal and consensual, yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot of people are saying that if you see sex workers, it's fine, but not if you're using sex workers to cheat on your wife. And cheating on your wife is not my business unless you're cheating on your wife with sex workers.
Or unless you're using patron money or...
There's a lot of the things in this of what happened. And, I'm not trying to say, look, you guys need to get your feelings in check. Because I've gone through all these feelings, too. I'm just putting them to recording right now. So, if sex work is valid, at that point, it's just a vice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone...
It may not even be a vice.
If we caught Lloyd pulling a bottle gate, I don't think people would mind.
No, they wouldn't mind.
Because, he's not held to any particularly high standard.
Yeah, there's no illusion that Lloyd doesn't drink, unless... maybe he doesn't. If he doesn't, and then he's does the Bottlegate thing, I think people would just feel sad for him rather than...
Yeah, if he was, off the wagon.
But
or
I mean,
something.
the thing is, Bottlegate, or not Bottlegate, but drinking could hurt his family, potentially.
Yeah.
Right? And if that's what's happening, if we found out that he was hurting his family through his drinking, I think people would people would have a problem with that, but I don't think they'd have as much a problem. And I think and this is really just my take, I don't have proof for this, but the feeling I get from the community is there's a lot of deep-seated sort of anti-sex work vibes going down. That's how I feel. I don't know necessarily that it's true.
I don't think it's coming from everybody, but I have
Not
seen,
everybody.
But I have seen some discourse that sounds like very much like sex work is valid, but, and if you put but, that discredits anything you said before that.
Not true. We did a but, and our but was it has to be legal and consensual.
I know.
Legal consensual sex work is valid. Bar
yeah,
none.
no, that's no, that's fine. I guess I just mean like when they're like sex work is valid, but
it's not okay in these situations.
Yeah. And then but it's still icky.
Yeah, right.
Like, I just mean, like, caveats like that are just, like, discrediting the
And I
idea.
think circling around that discourse is also any kind of discourse that's around, like, did Lloyd disclose his STD status? Like, we don't know anything about his health.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what that is, and, like, we don't know the health of anyone he might have slept with. You don't know his health. We don't know. It's just conjecture, and it is anti-sex work talk.
Yeah. One thing, though.
In disguise.
Yeah, I think the implication that automatically STIs enter
is involved, yeah. Like
that is, like we.
Right. And it's also, I mean.
That is just anti-sex. Well, even if you didn't.
Even if you don't intend it to be, and I'm not saying you're a villain if you've engaged in that kind of conversation. Those thoughts have come to me as well. It's just I'm also trying to be better about being more pro-sex work.
I think, because
for the longest time, I was just, my impression was, and this is actually an interesting thing, I got into an argument with somebody on YouTube in the comment section. I know it's a terrible habit. I'm trying to break it. And I mentioned that somebody said, it's crazy to marry a sex worker. They actually didn't say the word sex worker. They said something much harsher. And I said, I don't think it's that crazy to marry a sex worker.
They're people.
They're just people, right?
Yeah, you can
Now, granted, in the situation we were talking about, the guy had known her for 2 weeks and was already married. So, like, that's a little weird.
That's a hasty decision.
It's a very hasty decision.
That's nothing
She also tried to kill him later. So, like, really bad call. Just a horrendous call.
But that's nothing
But it has nothing to do with the fact that she's a sex worker.
Her occupation is not.
Right, her occupation is not what caused her to kill him.
There are a lot of other variables in that objective sentence for another day.
And so somebody else said, like, nah, man, marrying a sex worker is an L every time. And I thought to myself, like, I can't figure out why. Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine, you think that. And at some point in my life, when I was, like, 15, I probably thought the same thing. But, like, if you ask, like, what are the premises and conclusion that leads to marrying a sex worker is always an L, I don't know what that argument looks like. Because, like, to me, it seems like you've just pulled some puritanical BS out of your butt, and then that was the end of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. It seems like there's maybe an undercurrent of that going on, but I can't say for sure. Maybe somebody, I'm sure we'll have people disagreeing with us if we get any comments at all.
But the last thing on, like, just switching it out for another vice.
Sure, yeah.
I think with most vices, though, sex work is definitely the most stigmatized because, like, again, if he was an alcoholic and all his patron money went straight to booze and was going less and less to his work, I even think at that point, I don't think that would be outrage-inducing. I think we'd just be sad, and a lot of people would be like, Lloyd, you need to get help.
Yeah.
And if he has admitted on
it's honestly amazing to me that he hasn't framed this as a sex addiction.
Well, he has.
Just not in those words.
Not in those words. And also, I mean, at that point, though, there is I do not want to talk about the live stream. But, we'll not stay there. But, real quick, if he has a sex addiction, I hope he gets the counseling he needs.
Yeah.
Mental health first.
Actually, there's another vice that I think is kind of analogous, maybe, and that is gambling. Right? If he was taking patron money and leaving his wife behind to do whatever in order to go gamble when he told her he wouldn't. right? I think that would make it basically analogous, except for the inclusion of sex workers. But, you know, he could go to, instead of Thailand, he could go to any place, right?
Vegas.
He could go to Vegas and gamble his money away. And if that's what he was doing with the patron money, I don't think people would be as harsh on him.
I think, I think that would...
I think people would look at that as a problem. Even if he was hurting his family, I think people would still be like, Lloyd, you gotta stop gambling, bud.
I think gambling might be just as divisive as this is.
You think so?
I think there are some people who treat gambling as a legitimate problem, and a lot of people who think, like, you're just greedy.
Oh, really? Okay.
At least, maybe that's just me with my witness upbringing. We were always taught, like, no gambling, because that just means you're really greedy.
Really? Is that what you were taught?
Yeah, it's greedy.
I was always taught that gambling is like a serious medical condition. Because, I mean, I guess my parents are both psychiatrists. And so, like, they probably have a more sympathetic view to gamblers than others. But
okay, so the last variable we're going to talk about is Thailand. And this one is particularly... This is a big hot button because I didn't know before this, and I've read a few articles since this all came out about Thailand. I had no idea that sex trafficking was such a big problem in Thailand. They have outlawed sex work. Prostitution is criminalized there. But it still goes on. And a lot of the sex workers are not consenting to work there.
Right. That doesn't mean we know that it's a majority. I don't think it is a majority, but
they have been trafficked, and it was not their choice.
There are people.
Some of them are underage. Yeah. There is also the knowledge that in Thailand the age of consent is 15.
Yeah.
And that is also an issue for people, because that means that there is the potential, not that he did or didn't. He could have had sex with a minor by Western standard, by other countries' standard.
He could have had sex with someone he shouldn't have had sex with.
He could have had sex.
It doesn't really matter whether they were a minor or trafficked or whatever.
Yeah, he could have.
It's possible. We don't know that it's not true.
He could have had sex with someone who wasn't old enough, wasn't
able to consent.
Wasn't able to consent.
Yeah.
He could have, and that is what people are talking about when they talk about sex work. And I think a lot of people who are like, bah, Thailand, Schmyland, I think they don't understand, like, what people are worried about necessarily. Because when I first heard he got sex work, I was like, oh, that's sleazy. Why are we hearing about this? That was basically... I
feel like we came about that from two very different perspectives.
Yeah.
Because when they mentioned Thailand, I instantly went, ooh, okay, that kind of changes things.
Yeah, I didn't know about Thailand
and to be
at
fair,
all.
Let's be real. That's the reason that the original allegation mentioned Thailand. They never said that he did anything non-consenting. Mm-hmm. Or with a child, anyone... I mean, Lloyd claims that everyone he's had sex with has been 20 years or older. And, like, okay, that's what he says. I
think it's also fair to bring up, like, they could have been underage. He could have just not known.
Yeah, he could have not known.
They could have just been like, I'm legal.
Yeah, but, like, he also said that, like, the reason he went to Thailand not for a sex tourism, but for what's it called?
Relaxing.
It's beautiful, and it's also inexpensive. Well, there are other beautiful, inexpensive places to go
that aren't like. I think
Phuket is where he says he went, and Phuket also has a booming sex worker industry. It's not as big as Bangkok, but you can still get it there. So like.
Yeah, I think it's.
I don't know.
It's just not a great. It's not a good look. Long and short, it's not a good look.
It's not a good look, but I think that is.
I think there's no way for us to truly know that whoever Lloyd slept with was on the up and up.
Right.
I don't even really know if we can know that Lloyd would know that they were 100% on the up.
I have no idea how Lloyd would verify that.
So, that's where it's like. I don't know. It's just kind of an iffy thing. Like, I mean, he's very well informed, though, so it almost seems like infantilizing him to imply, like, oh, maybe he didn't know about Thailand's reputation.
Yeah, no, I think
he definitely
he
did.
almost certainly knew.
So, like, I don't know. Is it fair to say, like, oh, just don't go to Thailand, man? What are you doing?
Yeah, I think it is fair.
You think?
I think it's fair to suggest to a sex addict that they should not go to Thailand.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I don't even mean, like, don't go because you might get tempted. I mean, don't go because people will think you did if you are a known sex addict. Yeah. And even if you're an unknown sex addict, you shouldn't go because you might get tempted, right? Like, that is also a valid reason to not go.
Yeah.
If you want to go for sex tourism, why don't you go somewhere closer to home? Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you could just hit up the Netherlands where it's legal and it's all regulated. You can do that. Or hit up prostitutes at home. Right, he was doing that.
Yeah, I think...
So he wanted to get away. He wanted to go somewhere tropical. Okay, go to the Bahamas. Go to...
Yeah, I don't know what's near Croatia. He said Thailand was the cheapest travel. I think somewhere. Someone said that.
Yeah, there are lots of parts of Africa he could have gone to. Maybe... I mean, there's...
Okay.
That's just it. Like Thailand was a poor choice for that. But I think the thing that I want to drive home, though, is that we're making a lot of assumptions as a result of the inclusion of Thailand, and unless we can back up those assumptions with something else, we need to remain, at the very least, we need to be open-minded to the possibility of new information, but also recognize the limitations of what we do know and what we don't know. And as far as we know, he's, I believe, willing to admit that he did have sex with sex workers in Thailand, but he claims everybody was 20 years or older, and I don't honestly think it really, like, I don't think it's plot, like, I mean, I don't know Lloyd Evans, right? So
yeah,
I can't speak to his actual character, but it would be pretty audacious, I think, even for someone who seems to have an ego like Lloyd's. It would be pretty audacious for him to take a break from YouTube because his mental health isn't doing well, because his marriage isn't doing well, and then fly to Thailand in order to do the thing that is causing his marriage to fall apart with a child. Like, that seems like a crazy way to live your life. Maybe that's the way he lives his life. I don't know.
Yeah. I think, though, that was our last variable.
Yeah. And, like, honestly, if you look at the other words here, that none of them are super important. I guess solicit, you could swap that out for something, but for the most part, like,
politely engaged.
Yeah, politely engaged. Excuse me, ma'am, or sir, or NB. I don't know. What is there a word like ma'am or sir for an NB? I should look that up. Anyways,
okay.
The point of this was not for us to say, here's what we think, Lloyd is blank. What we're trying to do is remind people that, one, you need to think for yourselves. We're all guilty of falling into herds, into crowds. We do that naturally. We're social animals. We're going to do that. We also need to remember that it's important to value the ideas of a person rather than the person themselves. Yeah. That includes us. Don't take our words for things. If we say something and you're not sure it's true, look it up.
Yeah, we've asked you several times to do our jobs for us this video.
No, not like that.
I'm just kidding.
But you should do your own research. That does not mean Google something and then just call it quits at the first result. That actually means investigating from reputable sources, figuring out what reputable sources exist, and then follow those up. But it also involves not taking somebody and putting them on a pedestal, because regardless of whether Lloyd is entirely in the right or entirely in the wrong, it does not matter. We shouldn't have been looking at Lloyd like he's the end-all be-all of ex-JWs. He's not the governing body. We got away from that, remember?
Yeah, I think what I would like to say, what I've learned from us talking all this out, and that Lloyd Evans is some guy. He made videos that I happen to watch. They help me wake up, help me figure out other people to watch as well. He's also a guy who's made some real sketch choices that I do not agree with. And I'm not even a patron, so it's really up to you guys if you want to do that or not. That's your choice. That's your call. And that's about it.
Yeah.
So...
Can I say one more thing? It just... seeing this sort of fracture happening in the ex-JW community reminds me a lot of how the atheist skeptic community on YouTube kind of went through a similar thing. You know, for a while we were all there together having a good time. Ha ha ha, look at all these silly religious arguments. And then the whole community got kind of sharded apart because some of them started to go what was called the SJW route, and then others went anti-SJW. And quickly it became clear that all these creators who we liked, some of them agreed with us and some of them disagreed, and we got our feelings involved. We got our feelings hurt imagining these creators to be something that they're not, which is they're people. They're just people. And we form these parasocial relationships with these people, and we get hurt when they do something we don't like or say something we don't agree with.
Yeah.
It's not fair to anybody involved. Especially you.
The only thing I would add to that is that I think the XJW community isn't hurting that bad. Just because, like,
I'm glad to see that.
There's still a lot of posts on things nothing to do with Lloyd Evans.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, honestly, I saw a post earlier on the XJW Reddit that was so sweet. It just made me...
Was it that one from the Active Witness?
Yeah. There are people out here, and we're all just trying to figure out what's the truth, what's real.
Yeah.
And, like...
I mean, it sounds like a silly question, but seriously, what is real?
And so, you know, Lloyd cheated on his wife using patron money to solicit workers in Thailand and elsewhere. But, like, I'm just here to talk about why I'm not a Jehovah's Witness anymore.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of you guys are here too. So this was, I think, a good example for us to just, like, really think things through together. And I don't want that to sound like use your head.
Dummy.
Yeah.
The answer should be obvious. It's not obvious.
It's not obvious, and I don't even really know that we reached a solid conclusion.
I think we did. Yeah.
But, you know, like, please sound off in the comments. Our link tree has a bunch of different ways to reach out to us. And honestly, I would just like to hear what you guys think. And, like, we can all just, like, talk about and other stuff. If you have, like, something you'd like us to make a video about, if you'd want, like, a more formal our deal.
Yeah, like our take on it, we could maybe do something like that, but I don't know if that'd be interesting.
Yeah, but this is just what we did now. So we're going to leave it at that. And we will see you guys when we upload something next.